Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast, and today we're going to go through the laws of human nature as a summary once again by the powermoves.com site. The book being by Robert Greene, by the way, a pretty known author, an author that, well, I don't really know what to think about him for the most part, but I'm really interested in the book. I think that I haven't gone through the book yet, or it's just, may have been a few years or months since, quite the last time. But we are gonna see, and we are gonna notice, and we're gonna do things, and here it is. In The Laws of Human Nature, author Robert Greene attempts to explain and demystify something that should be so simple, yet it is so difficult and elusive: our own nature as human beings. Which is really interesting. The thing is, sometimes I do clearly see myself overanalyzing situations, people, and things, which is something to be conscious about, which is something to keep in mind, because this can indeed make your life even harder than it already is. Information can sometimes be a gateway to great change, but also to some, negative aspects. Just because you know more, period. Does this work? Yes, it does. Bullet summary. Choose the important people in your life based on their strength of character first and foremost. Understand, accept, and use your dark side, both the repressed desires and your aggression. Use your morality to instill in yourself a sense of urgency. I'm so lucky. I don't know which message this was. It's probably not that important anyway. Full summary about the author. About the laws of human nature. Greene has always taken the time to research his books thoroughly. In the case of The Laws of Human Nature, it took a whole 6 years, and expectations were sky high. Drawing from different disciplines and from the most desperate authors such as Ramachandran, Kahneman, and Jung, Greene says, Jung being Carl Jung, by the way, consider The Law of Human Nature a code book for deciphering human nature. Introduction. Robert Greene says that modernity might lead us to believe we are transcending human nature. But the opposite is true. We have never been more enslaved by human nature as we are today. Our emotions have only been heightened by social media and viral news. Makes it all the easier to inflame hearts and evade rationality. And it is easier than ever for manipulative politicians and leaders to manipulate us. Yeah. Also companies, through marketing. But yeah. And look out our tribal tendencies, which the digitalization has only made it easier. Now we can find our little groups and insult ourselves with group thinking and herd mentality. See red pill analysis as an example. The aim of the laws of human nature is twofold. First of all, help people judge others more effectively while making it difficult for the more destructive types to harm you, and learn your own human nature for true self-development. But the true kind, not just self-development per se, but the true one. We are all cut from the same cloth and we all share the same tendencies. The sooner you realize this, the greater your power will be to overcome the negative traits within you. Master your emotional self. The law of irrationality. Guess what? It's a good idea to to be able to control your fucking emotions. Didn't see that coming. We think we are rational, but we are not. We clearly are not. To achieve our potential, we need to learn how we are irrational and reactive to the world. Ask yourself, where do your irrational drives come from? Why are you angry and why are you being resentful? Greene talks about the 2008 financial crisis and expands on psychological biases. The author says that history shows there have been men of great rationality, which are proof that yes, we can be rational and increase our chances of success by becoming more rational. The longer you can resist reacting, the more mental space for actual reflection. Yes, I do understand that. And it just also makes sense from a purely kind of, well, how should I say, purely physical standpoint. I mean, if I have more time, I have more time to use it, which just makes sense. The point for me though is, what is the reaction going to be? And is the reaction actually going to be better just because you're using more mental space and more time, essentially? Or is it even going to be worse? Is it going to be the same, or does it even matter? The second, transform self-love into empathy. The law of narcissism. Narcissism has been on a steady rise in the last decades, and it climbed the record highs with the latest generations. We are all a bit narcissistic, but your goal is to move to a healthy narcissism. To do so, you be honest with your self-absorption. Don't dupe yourself that you are altruistic. Healthy narcissists are driven and focus their drive outward. They incorporate feedback and recover quickly from failures and setbacks. In his usual historical examples, Greene talks about Stalin. I would actually really like to know the right pronunciation of Stalin. I just know it Stalin, from the German, or with German pronunciation anyway. Stalin came to loathe his closest friends because he had to play the charming game with them, and why should he be charming with anyone? This is an important a lesson of how power can turn friendships into enemies. It also reads, how to overcome an entitled mentality and win a narcissist versus lose a narcissist. Turn off the internal monologue to tune in to the world. Yes, sometimes we do not see the things that we need to see just because our head is screaming. And, well, the voices in our head are screaming. And it is not the best position to be in, because you're probably going to miss a lot of things that you should not miss, a lot of things that you should be aware of and should keep in mind. See through people's mask. The law of role-playing. Humans are consume-made actors. Okay. We all wear a mask and we all learn how to lie. We adapt ourselves to our groups, and we are so good at acting that we don't even realize we do. In this chapter, Greene goes into body language, but the value of learning language from a book is limited, or from this book. Also reads the mask of masculinity. See through people's mask. Well, this is yet again another very useful. I'm sorry. Determine the strength of people's character. The law of compulsive behavior. Character is a primary value when evaluating people to work for or partnering with. Their characters matter more than their charm, intelligence, and also charisma. The strength of someone's character comes within the core of someone's personality. It comes from genetics, good parenting, mentors along the way, and continuous improvement. Strong characters stem from a feeling of personal security and self-worth. They can take criticism and learn from experience, don't easily give up because they want to get better, and not insecure about their personal status. They can subsume their interests to that of the group. What does fucking subsume mean? Define subsume. Include or absorb in something else. Most of these phenomena can be subsumed under two broad categories. They can have subsumed their interests to that of the group. Does this okay, the group's interests are more important than mine, or there's just some coexistence? I can understand both. I do actually like the first one a bit more. Weak people are overcome by circumstances. They are slippery and evasive. They don't improve much because they can't take criticism. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that criticism is the only way to improve. It certainly isn't. There are many ways in which you can improve, and certainly there are just people that have really improved, but taking criticism, well, it is a really difficult task. Try to test people's character by making a joke, criticizing them, or giving them a challenging task, and associate only with strong characters. put strength of character above intelligence and charm. Well, I do actually really like that. I do really like this quote-unquote challenge that you're going to give somebody else. But it also heavily depends on how you say it and how you communicate that. Of course, if you're just really blunt and are like, okay, I dislike this, that, and the other thing about you, and you bluntly and clearly say it like this, it's going to hit differently than saying, okay, you know what, just beating around the bush a little bit and just, choosing your words very clearly and over communicate that this is just your opinion and this is just something that you have seen and you are not even sure whether this is even the case. Something completely different. Accept your character. Robert Greene says that we all have a rather strong and set character by our genes and childhood. Refusing to accept that is refusing to influence it. Instead, we need to learn how we are wired, and then we will have a certain control to smooth our edges. Yeah, definitely. There are just some things, and it is, quite difficult to accept that and realize that, but more or less accepting it for one particular reason. When I'm accepting it, I basically accept that this is who I am. And this is a rather strange place to start when you're willing to improve. Okay, this is the person that I am. Just now improve. Just do something about that. Change your identity, your personality. It's difficult. Become an elusive object of desire. The law of covetousness. Instead of focusing on what you want, focus on what others want, on their repressed desires and fantasies. What you offer should be new, unfamiliar, and exotic, or least presented as such. Yeah, I do actually like this sub-sentence, presented as such, because I would definitely say that, does this actually make anything better, or is it just, well, I guess it kind of should do something better. Maybe like this. I don't know, could work better. Anyway, the way appearance matters. Whether it is a person's appearance, whether it is presenting your work, it really does matter. It creates context, and context matters. And it is part of communication, and it is part of also really good communication. So one should also really keep in mind not only the work one does or the person one is, but how you are presenting it. The problem could be if this is contradicting. If I'm saying that I'm a very nice, kind, and empathetic person, and while another person is talking, I interrupt this person and say it like this. This does not have anything to do with fucking empathy then. Elevate your perspective. The law of short-sightedness. Keep along irrespective. Keep along irrespective. Avoid being pulled by new trends and new shining objects. Stick with what you start and prioritize based on your long-term goals. What's going on there? Some people are just amazing. Stick with what you start and prioritize based on your long-term goals. Yeah, I would certainly also say that this is something quite essential when it comes to partnering, mating, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I don't know. Do you really have the time to just, fuck around with people? Like in the literal sense and also in the way I meant it. Wasting your time and whatnot. Like, I don't know. Like, this is partly one of the reasons why I do hate just making yourself rare and, appearing as, I don't know, someone that is so incredibly important and shit like that. On the other hand, I do just really clearly understand it. Like, okay, it is then an object of desire, something that we cannot have. It is always going to be more interesting than something that, That's something that we can easily have and easily attain and easily uh, soften people's resistance by confirming their self-opinion. The law of defensiveness. As Carnegie says in How to Win Friends and Influence People, to be interesting, be interested. A bit of a typo here. Make others the focus of attention. That's just amazing advice. To be interesting, be interesting. Guess what? Similar to Chris Voss, to influence people, Robert Greene recommends you stop trying to push them. Instead, take a step back and assume an inferiority position. Ask them for advice, make them feel good, make a small favor for them, induce them to reciprocate. Don't remind them of the favors you have done for them in the past. It doesn't make them feel grateful, it reminds them of their dependence on others, and we want to feel independent. Instead, remind them of what they have done for you in the past, confirm their self-opinion as good people. Change your circumstance by changing your attitude. The law of self-sabotage. You're not a pawn, you are an active player. Mind and body are one, and one influence the other. Don't see yourself as limited by birth. Think that you can grow and improve. Because you fucking can. And this is a fact. Because there is something called plasticity of the brain. And we can change things, indeed. I think that, well, saying it so sarcastically, but, this is, I think, as far as I know, really quite the case. The law of repression. We all have a dark side, but most of us mask it. Greene uses Carl Jung's terminology of the shadow, which consists of all that we try to deny about ourselves and that we regret. But denying and hiding it causes a whole host of problems. Depression and anxiety come from not being our true selves, from always playing a role. We internalize all the ideas of our culture, such as quote-unquote being nice and having pro-social values, which are often necessary for the smooth functioning of our society. But in the process, it pushes a big part of our personality into the repressed corner that Jung called the shadow. Greene instead welcomes the reader to include our dark side in who we are, to accept it and to use it for good and to fuel us towards our goals. You often recognize people with repressed dark side by their exaggeration. Too much masculinity, for example, betraying a yearning to be dominated, or too much saintliness, hiding their sexual appetites or their hunger for power. Here's how to introduce the shadow within yourself. See the shadow. Look for opposite traits in yourself: emotional outbursts and insecurity. Don't run from it. The tendency will be to run away, so don't. Embrace it and use it to fuel your hunger. Also see how I used my dark side. That's the sign at its best. Yeah, with that being said, I'm going to end the episode here. I wish you the best and hopefully see you soon. So, bye-bye.